We are live with Live Online with me, Brody, your host, from my kitchen and living room here in Clayton, North Carolina. And I think we are actually live this time. The third go at it with a different software. But here we are with a show that is self-inspired by my choosing to leave a 20-year career in radio broadcasting to focus on the people I love. And so today we're going to be talking with cartoonist and comedian Grant Crowell, who lives here in the Triangle area. Also recently become an author. And today his story is really going to be all about going from declaring bankruptcy from some bad decisions that he made to retiring in the next 3 years, which I don't know anybody who wouldn't be interested in figuring out how to retire now or even in the next 5 years, right? So, by the way, if you're watching the show on Facebook or YouTube live as it happens, you can comment live. And when Grant comes on, if you have any questions for him and about his story, then maybe he will answer them live on the show. So first, we're going to do a live online check-in with Kathy Engel, who, hey, Kathy.
Hi, Brody.
So we had Kathy on the last show, since this is my third attempt at live online. And the last attempt, I think you were actually in the Grand Cayman on vacation with your family.
Yep.
And it just got cutting out. So I said, we have to get your story, because Kathy, who's originally from the Triangle, now in Richland, Michigan, was in the Grand Cayman. How long were you there?
We were there for 12 days.
Okay. And so during those 12 days is when those earthquakes that were happening in the Caribbean were happening. And they were like, how many earthquakes was it in total? Do you remember?
Yeah, we had 23 total. So it was the initial one and then all the aftershocks, but it was 23 total.
Okay. So you get there, and after how many days after you arrive in the Grand Cayman with your family, do you see the news and do these earthquakes start happening?
So we got there on Saturday, and the first earthquake happened. The big one happened on, it was Monday the 26th. I think that was their correct date. So yeah, my husband, my two kids were sleeping, taking a nap, and me and my daughter were sitting on the couch reading a book. My mother-in-law was out on the balcony reading her book. We were sitting there, and all of a sudden we heard this noise and felt a little bit of shaking. And initially it wasn't terrible. And I looked around, and it kind of sounded like the spin cycle on a washing machine. So I didn't think anything of it. It went away. A couple seconds later, it came back even louder, more shaking. Sounded like a helicopter was super low to the condo we were staying in. So I was kind of freaking out at that point. Then it went away again, and then it came back even louder and stronger. The entire building was shaking. The chandeliers were, swaying back and forth. The earthquake itself, the noise that we were hearing was all the vibration of all the dishes in the kitchen vibrating on the shelves. The pictures were falling off the entertainment center. And I ran and woke up my husband. I was like, we got to get out of the building. And we got everybody awake and ran downstairs as fast as we could.
By the way, it's beautiful. It looks like where you guys were staying is beautiful.
It is. That's our 4th year staying at the same condo.
Wow.
It's a great place to visit. We go every year, around the same time every year. So an earthquake was like the furthest thing from my mind. Initially, I wasn't sure what was going on. I thought the building was about to collapse. So I was just trying to get my kids out.
So when the worst one, is that the one where you said the chandeliers were shaking and everything?
Yes, that was the first one.
That was the first one was the worst one.
Yes.
That's so.
Yeah. So typically when you have an earthquake, you have a very large one, and then everything after that is not considered necessarily an earthquake. It's called an aftershock because it's going to be a smaller magnitude than the first one. So our first one was a 7.7 magnitude, which is the strongest earthquake that the Cayman Islands has ever experienced in recorded history. And then our first, or it was actually our second aftershock, was a 6.5 magnitude, which is still a really pretty large earthquake.
So how do you talk your kids through that? I mean, you were prepared for you were somewhat prepared for this once you were there and you were hearing about everything that was going on in the news.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever a easy or good way to prepare or talk to your kids about it. My 5-year-old, Ellie, she was the one that was sitting with me on the couch. She's the one that she's actually right here right now.
Hi.
Can you say hi?
Hi.
Hi. She had trouble sleeping that night. She kept every time there was a loud noise, every time there was any sort of movement, she was like, "Oh my gosh, it's an earthquake." And so it's, you want to protect your kids and do everything that you can to keep them safe. And unfortunately, with natural disasters, you have zero control over it. So
Yeah.
Me trying to stay calm, trying to keep my kids calm. After the earthquake, we ran outside, and then they were evacuating the beach because we were under a tsunami warning. So we went from running outside for fear of the building collapsing to running back inside for fear of a tsunami. So it was kind of chaotic.
So I remember we had a earthquake here in the Triangle. It was a few years ago, right? I don't remember which year it was.
2012.
And that was probably nothing compared to what you guys experienced.
No, I was there in the Triangle when that one happened, downtown Durham working. And yeah, this one was, I mean, I can't even explain how to compare the two because they were that different.
Well, you know what? I'm so glad you guys are okay. You're safe. Based on what I saw on Facebook, it looks like you guys still made the best of it. You had a great time. You're going to go back, right? Because this is an annual trip.
Yeah, we've already booked our trip for next year. I mean, I was on edge the rest of the vacation, especially because we kept having the aftershocks. I kept feeling them. I was like, I'm just ready to go home.
Yeah.
To be back in Michigan where we don't have earthquakes. Didn't have to worry about it, but it's things can happen anywhere that you are, and you just have to try and handle the situation the best that you can, and try and enjoy it and know that you don't have control over everything. So we stayed and we had a great vacation.
You know what it was? It was the fact that, like, when the kids were asleep, you and your husband, things were getting, so romantic, and that was the universe saying, you guys are doing it right. You can still vacation with the family.
Yeah.
Enjoy time with your significant other. Anyway, look, Kathy, Thank you for telling this story. I'm
no
so glad you guys are okay and you're safe, and that you guys still managed to have a good time out of it. And even though you don't live in the Triangle anymore, we should definitely keep in touch.
Yeah, well, I don't, but I come back to visit every so often. So
if you all ever need an extra person, because maybe one of your kids can't go, just don't forget the little people.
Or a babysitter.
A babysitter. Okay. Hey, Kathy, thank you so much.
Yep, you're welcome.
On the show. All right. Yeah.
Bye.
All right. Awesome. So glad we had a chance to talk to Kathy and get her accounts finally of what that trip was like. And I'm just glad that they're okay and they had a good time. So Valentine's Day came and went, and I did a Instagram Live interview with the marriage and family therapists, and we talked about Valentine's Day. And so I was gone for a few days at a convention in Los Angeles. I made sure I wrote little notes around the house for my girlfriend. I even ordered flowers, made sure they were the right flowers. And so, no joke, I get a phone call on Valentine's Day, and I made sure the flowers got there the day before. So I get a phone call from my girlfriend, and she says, "What kind of flowers did you order me?" And I send her a picture, and she goes, "Well, here's what I got." And so I didn't even know there was such thing as blue roses. And I'm livid because she's saying, "I didn't think you knew what I liked." And I'm sitting there going, oh my God. And of course, I'm all the way in California. What can I do? So finally, I did my due diligence. When I got back, just like 2 days later, I went out to the local florist. I said, I am never going the national route again to get flowers. So my experience, shop local, which you should be doing anyway. But a lesson learned. But I ended up doing right 2 days later. So by the way, there's been so many good programming between Netflix and Hulu. So these crime, now a lot of podcasts that are so popular are these crime podcasts, like these true crime podcasts. So I love watching that kind of stuff online, like the detective stuff, the forensic files. And so it's Netflix, the Aaron Hernandez one. This was amazing. And I ended up binging this over the course of like a few days. If you haven't seen it, Killer Inside the Mind of Aaron Hernandez. And I don't know a lot about the Patriots other than, from obviously watching football and some friends who are from Massachusetts. And so that got me hooked. Tara and I realized, okay, there's actually Lacey Peterson murder documentaries, and not one, but two on Hulu, which I'm in the middle of binging one of those. And it's just so compelling. So if you're looking for some good programming, and Michael, what's up? What's up, Michael? Thanks for watching. If you know of any good programming, share it. Netflix, Hulu, and I know people are always posting on Facebook. What should I watch? What should I watch? So there's some ideas. All right, it's time to talk to my guest, cartoonist, comedian, and now author, Grant Crowell, who lives right here in the Triangle area. Grant, can you hear me?
I sure can. Boy, what a fun show. This is Brody After Dark. Glad I had my coffee.
Welcome. Yeah, I see you look like you're freshly shaven and you got your hair all made up. See, this is like, the power of live video.
Yeah,
so,
that is. I did this for you. Well, also because I was looking like a pretty hairy Neanderthal last time you saw me. So I thought, let's shake things up a bit.
Yeah, you're like, I don't wake up looking like this.
No, I don't know if I call it waking up looking good, but yeah, I got the nice little trim for you. So I figured, hey, at least I can do for you having such a fun show. Boy, what interesting guests you. I think we can promise your audience this episode will be definitely 100% earthquake free. Let's promise them that. No shakes, no tremors.
Yeah, we've had an earthquake here in the Raleigh-Durham area. So knock on wood where you are. I'm just saying.
Safe so far. Snow tomorrow.
Again. So for those of you who are watching this in real time as it happens, if you have a question for Grant, then drop it in your comment section. And if we have time during the show, then we'll see if Grant can answer your question. But Grant, who has a story of going from bad decisions where it meant declaring bankruptcy to now retiring in only 3 years. I can't wait to hear the story and what this book is about, because it was all about making an impact. And I know creative inspiration. And so first, tell me, how did you get to the point where you had to declare bankruptcy?
Well, sure. Just a little background is sometimes bankruptcy is a very good thing, by the way, because it forces you to take responsibility and take a look at things you've been avoiding for so long. A little backstory for your audience. I'm originally from Hawaii, born and raised. So moved to Chicago and lived there for 21 years. And that's where, even before then, I started a business even when I was 21 years old. And I got into the early days of search engine optimization, website stuff. And with my then wife, got to speak in the very, very early years. And it was exciting getting to international stuff. Problem is I was undiagnosed with, I was eventually diagnosed, but I was undiagnosed at the time. I had severe ADHD. And once I was diagnosed, it all made sense. But the problem was I was so deep into debt and careless, reckless spending. It's like at other companies, the person with ADHD is the creative one. They're the one who thinks outside the box strategy. But then there's the get your stuff done. There's, especially when it comes to a business, paying attention to finances, which I didn't do. And I was a husband and wife team, and she didn't really do either. We were just not equipped for it. So even when you were making money, you're not paying attention to things. And that's what really screwed me up. So it was then, after being divorced and doing it solo for a good while, I was not taking a hard look at finances. And as much as good I was at my job, I wasn't being responsible. I wasn't being responsible with even taxes. I didn't even file taxes for several years, which is how crazy it was. But that's what it's like.
Were you not nervous as that was happening? Oh. Years are going by, and you're like, this is going to have an impact. You just didn't know how much of an impact it would be at that point.
Well, one thing I learned later was even with when you have a condition, and this condition would be I would be so easily distracted. Even when I would try to sit down and do taxes, I would get distracted, and I wouldn't even realize why I was getting distracted. So even when I would just simply try to concentrate, neurologically, I could just not focus. And that's the time when you kind of realize, okay, you probably really shouldn't be running a business, or do it more like on the side. And that was something where early on, I just wanted to get out of the rat race because I just was in really, really lousy jobs. And I had this great opportunity to at the time, but I wasn't assessing. I wasn't doing things like a business plan. Now, I was very good at doing it for other companies. I was very smart when it came to analytics and budgets and stuff. But when it came to you can't take you out of the equation because I was too emotional about it and didn't realize it. So yes, I didn't do that for years. And a true story is, after I'd filed for bankruptcy, which is when I found a very supportive partner who was very financially minded and gave me the help I needed. And it wasn't like, hey, let me take care of your bills. It was, we're going to do this the right way. Going to owe up to these things, have a payment plan. And guess what? I kid you not, the IRS actually forgave my debt because I had a notice from my psychiatrist saying my ADHD was so severe at the time that it was forgiven. And crazy, but they, well, I say they bought it, ironically enough, pardon the pun. But they bought it. Now, I couldn't do that with the state of Illinois where I lived because there was an amnesty time. But I had never realized that I never really owed that anything. If anything, I was due for a credit. So I had worried for no reason. Now, so it was wasted energy. But imagine dealing with creditors all the time, calling you up. And I didn't even know at the time, I was very naive about certain things of the business of, yeah, you can file for bankruptcy. I thought, well, that'll be the end. Now I realize this. No, that's actually what a lot of people do. But I never had a mentor. I never had a lot of other things that people tend to do. And so, but I can look back and then saying, hey, I learned my lesson. It was also at a time where the dot-com bust came around or people were, I also could not get clients to pay me on time because they were going through struggles. And sometimes it's part of dealing with the business. Today, I look back and say, there's so much I learned from it. And filing bankruptcy was a very, very smart thing to do at the time. I should have actually done it a year earlier or so. But that's where I look at it as that's not the low point. The low point was always stressing out or thinking, hey, I might be going to jail if I don't do this or that because you just don't know any better and you're stressed and you don't have a support group. So I look at the bankruptcy part as I'm finally now taking control over my life. And since then, it's given me so much focus on what to do financially that I actually look forward to those things because you really feel now you're in control. So you can be creative, productive, and financially responsible.
Wow. Well, congratulations on getting out of bankruptcy. So that, like, you must sleep better at night, I guess.
like a baby. Yeah. That is true. Like we talk about sometimes finances, that's, more than a lot of other things, ruin relationships. It's the stress of, you're not having to worry about the power being shut off or having enough gas. And that's a big part about being in a serious relationship with someone. But also what Yoda is, and there's my honey, my significant better, Karen. And she was the one that really got me in a really great mindset and taught me certain things that now are like second nature to me. But that was so important is that you're with someone who compliments you and who has patience and understanding about what are the things to work on with you. And it's made me so much better of a partner, but also in terms of doing a business now. One example is on going from with the uncontrolled ADHD to working at jobs and not being in a position when I went bankrupt of not knowing how to interact properly with each other and missing social cues to being so good at it that other people asked me to train them. Other people asked me, the guy who used to be distracted, to teaching project managers how to do project management and communicate with people internationally. Like I just finished up a 15-month contract with Dell Technologies. And a good part of my job wasn't just the technical stuff. It was teaching people internationally how to communicate better, how to be focused, how to be more productive, how to just get stuff done and pay attention to timelines. Because you can do it with a lot of really smart people, but sometimes they lack social skills or sometimes they lack empathy, especially digitally when you don't get what we're doing right now. Sometimes you don't get to see them. You don't get eye contact. So my bad experiences made me a lot more empathetic to people who are now having to deal with all of these same things that I dealt pre-internet.
So it's like you're like a consultant, but I call it like an organizational therapist. That's just my word that comes to it, which is great, because that's just another feather in your cap. It's another thing that you can do to kind of grow who you are and what you offer. So good for you. You took something that you had been kind of dealing with, and you turned it into something where now you're helping other people and organizations. So good for you.
Thank you. I like organizational therapist. I would always think of these fun terms like communications mentor. One fun thing I call myself now is a social wordsmith, but I always lead it off with people who know that, first off, I've always enjoyed coming up with made up words. That's been my gift. As long as I was a professional cartoonist for a while, like you, I worked in talk radio for a while. But it took me a long time to realize there I am. There's from my days of posing for those, little portrait shots or promo shots. Back when I had a goatee. I look shock jockish back then.
You do. You totally do. Yeah.
I do. I definitely fit the mode. But I always found that was my gift. I just never realized it till later on when I was working with a lot of tech companies. Like I could be managing YouTube channels for Procter & Gamble or other places, and I do with other techies. And I'd often find that when I could come up with a word for things that people were frustrated about at work, it broke the ice. It helped me make a connection. And it was something about it, and I come up with the word twisted because it wasn't what was expected, but it was fun, and it was an invitation to a conversation. So I found I could make really good social connections and get a message across when I knew other people were being distracted or multitasking, or as I like to say, messy tasking, because they're not really multitasking effectively. But it was a good way for me to, in a fun and understanding way, hey, you got that one up there. Yeah, that's from my Instagram page, messy tasking. True story, by the way, is a lot of cases of messy tasking. Yeah.
Oh, that's awful. God.
Yeah, it's
like the worst thing that I spilled water the other day, but I can't imagine spilling coffee. I would be terrified.
Well, all this came out to the idea of doing a book because I knew I was in such a good place. Like you said, I wanted to give back, and I like the idea of words, especially a creative use of words. Coming up with your own words, I found was more than just for laughs. It was a great way to build connections internally, like in your head, like being able to focus, like being able to do what we call executive function, thinking of things in a proper sequence, getting things done, managing your emotions, which is something I had a huge problem with internally until I practiced a lot of things and got better at them. But the other part is connections externally, like with people, not just who are like you, but people who you have to learn to get along with. And you have to learn to have patience with, and you have to maybe be a good listener with, and you have to understand that they might choose to do things a way that's different from you. And sometimes that's okay, as long as you both still are reaching an end goal. And that's when I thought the book that I was going to do wasn't just going to be about a lot of made up words. They were going to be my stories. That's why I came up with this book on Amazon called Grantasms, Creative Twisted Words for Cool People, which has got about 200 of each one of them is an individual twisted word for what I call a smart connection, or like a way to have a conversation with someone.
How did you come up with the name Grantasm? Well, so you're like, I got to include my name in this book.
Sure. What an ego trip.
But how long did it take you to come up with this perfect title? Because I have a good concept. So it's like, Grantasms. Yes, my name is in there. But
well, I originally had the name back when I was in college. My company name was called Grantastic Designs. So I could play with my name Grant or my last name Kroll many, many ways. And when I was a cartoonist, I was a college syndicated cartoonist. I would sign my name not just with my name. I thought that was kind of boring. I wanted to use words to be creative. So I'd always change my name around in there just to throw people off, make a little twist. And sometimes people would catch that and they would be looking forward to what's the next twist I'm going to do. So that kind of made me think grantasm. People would sometimes say, isn't it grantism? And I looked it up. I thought an ism is like a philosophy. It's a school of thought. An asm, of course, we associate with like orgasm, and granted, that's part of what I want to be an eye opener. But the other part is it's meant to have a visceral reaction, something that I didn't want it to feel like flat. I didn't want to read like a boring dictionary. I wanted to get the light bulb, but I also want to get the juices flowing. I want to feel emotional, visceral, maybe even something that some people might associate with sensual or sexual feeling, because there's a chapter on things that are associated with what I call okay stupid for date mating and sex and other stuff like that. And so, not saying this is for adults only, that will be a later book, but it really was an asm. An asm is a grantasm is like an ism and a gasm. It's like a and a It's like a oh yeah and an oh yeah. So that's how I came up with it.
So I want to get the story of how you got to a place where you're going to be ready to retire in 3 years. But before we get there, Chris has a comment where he wants to know, what was the life event that took you from ADHD issues to leading a global team successfully? It seems like a really big leap.
It did for me. Well, I had the fortune of working for a few other big companies. One was Sears many years beforehand, and on their e-commerce team, and CDW, a smaller technology company. So I was already learning things of how to manage it. But my work at Dell as a contractor and leading and being part of the live video events team, which is a very exciting thing, because you're dealing with a lot of new technologies out there and on a global scale with people internationally. And I found now my ADHD, because I could manage it, I was no longer attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I was attention dynamic hyperfocused dude. So again, you are in control of the words. Never to have a thing that's a condition and make it feel like it's a disability. So I was already in a state where I had learned project management tools, but I learned in a way of not trying to be so complicated with that, starting simple, so I could work with other people who would never use project management tools. I could, as my ADHD, I could be more empathetic and take the time to actually listen to people and not just do go, 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 but saying, wait, let's understand what our stakeholders' pain points are. Things that hadn't been done, things that were assumed. And when you assume stuff like that, you waste a lot of people's time. You miss a lot of opportunities. You don't meet certain goals. You miss revenue. And sometimes people get fired for it too, who really shouldn't be. So I was able to pinpoint stuff by being a good listener, which is ironic because ADHD people are associated with going blah, blah, blah all over the place and seeming like they aren't listening. But now, because I was aware of what I had, it actually made me more empathetic, and I could communicate this on any type of digital channel, whether it was Slack, whether it was email, whether it was Zoom, whether it was Skype. And I knew the limitations of these channels, so I could maybe crack a funny. I could say, if we were slow on Skype, I'd say we're having a Skype-sicle kind of thing. Or if the internet was going out at us, I would say we don't have an internet, we have an internet. And I don't do it all the time, of course. I mean, you don't want to come across a little loony. You do it when it's appropriate. You're mindful of social context. So I ended up having great relationships with people across the globe at Dell. And there's something too, PowerPointless. By the way,
this is one of my favorite words, because to me, this is the closest thing to a pointless meeting, and how people can relate to their company having pointless meetings, right?
Right. And what I love about putting out a book like this is hearing people's own interpretation from the word, and hearing you have a story with this. And my goal was, each one of these words is a snack size story, like a micro story or an anecdote. And what I love is the people I've come across who tell me their stories, and they bring up the word in a different way. Like here, I'm talking about a PowerPoint that it's like a Dilbert cartoon, where I swear I counted about 60 bullet points and 3 charts on a single slide. And some people just don't want to ask questions. Other people don't think of, hey, is your audience going to be able to absorb any of this? Seriously. But they're so self-conscious about missing anything. They want to put all their notes on a slide. And that's not what it's for. I know, because I've done a lot of good presentations. In fact, one of my presentations was the slide share of the month. And I knew it was visual, but more simple. 1 point, 1 slide. Make it more visual, tell a story. But I had enough empathy to work with the people who were bad at giving presentations and teach them and guide them. And then I could show a before and after. And then I would say, now talk to your audience. What do they like about this versus what happened beforehand? So I could say, let's measure and talk to your audience about it, saying things that were ignored. So my ADHD made me actually a really good listener, because I had learned from my earlier mistakes. I went through that journey, and I didn't beat myself up for it. And that's the big thing about why I did this book. It's to laugh at the behavior you want to fix. The biggest thing I learned out of all of this for anyone is, we don't fix ourselves when we have a sense of shame. It's that's why I didn't do my taxes, because I felt shameful that I hadn't done it before. That's why we don't fix behavior, because we're already putting ourselves in a low position. But when you can come up with a fun word that describes it, you can laugh at it. And now you're in a good mood. And when you're in a good mood and you're having fun, you actually get that stuff done.
I like that. I like that. And I like some of these words. I'm just going to go over a few words that really resonated with me from your book. And I'm so glad we talked about things like the whiteout, because how many times do people walk into a room and you have, like, I'd call it a brain fart, right? But whiteout works too, because it's kind of just like you blank. So, and then the other one, which I can't stand, and I'm so glad that you put in your book, is tipstortion, right? So
Right.
how many times do you go to like a fast food place and you have to tip before you even get your food? And like, so yeah. I can't stand that. And as a matter of fact, 9 times out of 10, I put $1 down, which I don't like. I'm a sucker. I'm a total sucker. And so I came up with one.
Oh.
And it was for people who reply all, which I can't stand. And to me, my thought is never to reply all. Like, I would be the person who would forget to reply all. So I came up with my own twisted word, e-hole.
E-hole. Ah, e-holes. We know what that means. And yes. I mean, my time at tech companies, when somebody decides to send something out to 300 people, first off, I would always try to make a tip, because I can. It's one thing when you can have a laugh like we do now about what I can relate to, because I dealt with that all the time. But I could tell people, like if they were in Microsoft Outlook, to just hit the ignore button, so they don't keep on having to see the reply all, and someone says thank you, hey, good job, thank you, like 50 times. That's one way. But the other way is teaching the sender to not put everyone's email on there, and to be more mindful of that.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I mean that is really my goal with it, because how much stress is it to be distracted by stupid stuff? And a lot of our distractions are by other people doing stupid stuff, some which don't know any better. And I call those just digital douches. And just like, when we say tipstortion, that's more of the other type of digital douche, the people who aren't really being considerate and putting the server, the person who's at the counter, it's not their choice, and they're uncomfortable about it. But I mean, my attitude about stuff like that is, hey, you want me to tip you before I've even gotten anything? How about you pay me, and then if I like the food, I'll give you half of it back. Okay, we'll split the tip, right?
That is, you need to be a consultant. This needs to be your main thing. Aside from writing these books, you need to be a consultant.
I would love to. I know it's going to take time, because we're, in the Raleigh Triangle Durham area. I live in Durham. There's a lot of tech companies, and there's a lot of smart tech people that don't yet have leadership skills, management skills, or workshop or team building skills. And I see that all the time. I mean, you can go to a meetup and you'll see these people, they'll be by themselves. They like going to loud environments where they don't really have to talk to each other, or they'll talk to someone who they already know and their back is turned. This is really important stuff. The challenge is that you have to be really, really patient, because the idea of a soft skill being for hard work is something a lot of people avoid until it gets to a boiling point. So what I figured I can do is, like on Instagram, at my One Twisted Squirrel, I start sharing these fun words. And I'm going to start doing this on LinkedIn as a video of a grantasm of the week around these things, to try to make other people like you and I say is, yeah, man, I finally have a word for that. So the next time it happens, they're not yelling at someone, they are laughing. And then they can relate. That's one of my favorite words. And by the way, a GERK, you don't need to have ADHD for it. You can be just someone who associates as a geek, nerd, or dork, striving to be a remarkable social citizen. I love to be able to give names to the things that challenge us and turn that frustration into a word creation. That will probably be the next step. It's just to network. It's just to go out and share these things. And ultimately, is like you said, I would love to be a communications mentor. You can call it an organizational therapist. You can call it a social wordsmith. How I look at it is, I help people put themselves in a good mood by teaching them how to create and share their own words, so they can be more productive and have better relationships and actually feel connected to the work they do.
Tiffany's like, what have I stumbled on?
Crazy stuff, huh, Tiffany?
Science. It could just be fun, right? So, all right. I have to ask the question, how did you put yourself in a position where you're going to be ready to retire? By the way, I'm just going to say, can I say you're in your 40s? Do I have permission to say that?
You do. I am technically in my 40s. I'm 49 and a half. So, hey, maybe made up words make you feel younger.
See, you said you're AC. I was trying to hint that you might be somewhere in the middle, but you just kind of like, you just totally, outed yourself as is the later part of that, but that's okay.
I'm the later part. Yep.
So my question is at what point did you realize I'm going to be able to retire in 3 years? How does somebody come to that point where they can retire in 3 years?
Well, you do what I call the important stuff, which is boring but important. And I did that because I have a partner who pictures showed earlier. Her name is Karen. We've been together for about 10 and a half years. I call her my spouse-ish because we're not married, but we're like everything. There she is, my spouse-ish there. And we do this every week, but we do it in a way that's easy. We do this in Quicken. She taught me how to save money and see over time. And because I'm a visual person, I would see the charts. And then because she's such a smart investor, she retired at the age of 45 after working in technology. I know. And she could be a money manager, financial advisor to so many people.
See, this is another great reason that you two are together.
Yeah.
You killed two birds with one stone. So good for you.
She's the brains, I'm the comedy, but she's funny too. But how this happened is we saw this plan, and by my working in the technology space that pays pretty well, and how I can work contract jobs because it frees me up to do other things, just like it freed me up to write this book. It's freeing me up to write a business version of Grantasms, like what we alluded to, so I can reach the business crowd and really help them out. There you go. That was over at a great coffee shop called Farmhouse Cafe in Wendell, a fantastic place. And I mean, a book really is your calling card. Now, granted, books are still hard to get through to people if you're not already known. So I thought after this first one, which is, it's me, it's my story, but I also talk about how I was able to manage my money in there in my chapter called Give Me Work, Grantasms for Money, or Give Me Money, Grantasms for Work. And from there, with Karen showing me these things, I could say, yeah, I now look forward to putting money in a 401k, in a Roth IRA, and taking advantage of these things. But it's also paying attention to coupons that come out, the small stuff, or then thinking to yourself, I don't need to splurge just because I have the money. I don't need to buy this latest technology piece because I have the money. It teaches you to be really thankful and appreciative of what you have. And I will say, practicing gratitude. I have a 5-minute gratitude journal. I meditate using the Calm app. I go running, and I have my Grantasms, as you know, on Instagram, or I call them now Instagrantasms, I guess. And just a Grantasm a day keeps the ADHD at bay. And so I don't feel the need to spend, because my dopamine fix is now from creative accomplishment. And this is the one thing that I can teach anybody, is when you have a feeling of accomplishment, that dopamine is satiated. The feeling that I need some kind of external fix because sometimes things just don't feel right. Now, neurologically, that was my case. But for people without ADHD, you don't need to have that to have cravings, to feel anything from you want to feel like you belong, to want to feel like you have self-esteem, to want to feel like you've accomplished things in your life. And I found the easiest way to make an accomplishment for me is create a word, but also share it with somebody and let them share their story too. You've built a bond, and now your dopamine is satiated. So that's how I've been able to save. And then so, yeah, in 3 years, I could continue living the life that I have, not ever have to worry about paying a single bill. But I hope to work as like you said, an organizational therapist, a social wordsmith, a communications mentor, social stylist, whatever name you give it. It's more important that the name you have is what reminds me of who you are and that you see progress.
I love that. Well, so basically just keep track of your money and look for those deals when you can find a deal, if you have to spend the money, right? And find somebody in your life that can help you with crunching the numbers, like you did with your significant other, except you get to live with this person. That's, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I lucked out, but really make it a game, but also talk with that person. If you're thinking about buying something like a cool microphone or whatever your splurge is, talk about it with somebody. And better yet, it's like, make the best argument you can, like if you were at work with a budget, but talk about it and then find, do you really, really need it? Or can you do with something less expensive? Those are the behaviors that make you naturally change the way you think, as opposed to, I want this coolest thing. Because otherwise, a lot of time, that equipment never really gets used, and you would have been just fine with something less, and you would be less stressed out about the bills you have to pay now. So it actually ends up making you a lot smarter about the purchasing decisions you have, which means more money for you. And what better idea is there that you actually look forward to getting up in the morning because you work because you want to, because you feel connected to your work, like what a Gurk would be.
There's the word again. And by the way, like the most expensive thing isn't necessarily the best choice, But, I tend to go somewhere in the middle. And if you don't need it, like if you get it on Amazon, you can return it within a given amount of time. So there you go.
Which sometimes your girlfriend might make you do that too. And half the time I do return stuff too, but I never feel bad about it too. It's like you're right. You always have that shot. So spousal partners are wonderful to have for financial matters as well as solid relationships. So we're both lucky.
Grant, thank you so much. The name of the book, I want to make sure I don't screw it up. Grantasm's Twisted Words for Cool People. You can find it on Amazon. There you go.
There you go. You can find it in my hands, but better to buy it on Amazon.
There you go. Grant, thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Brody. And Shaka, as we say in Hawaii, hang loose.
Hey, you have to teach me some surf moves soon when we go to the beach.
Okay. Maybe if we have waves over 1 foot. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for watching. All right, there we go. Grant, a lot to learn there from declaring bankruptcy to retiring in 3 years. Maybe a lot of us can fit somewhere in the middle there. I got to give a shout out to Bridget. Bridget, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And I don't even know if this is technically a podcast because I was doing a podcast, the Life Audit Podcast, and now this is technically a live streaming show. So thank you. I appreciate it. So every Wednesday night, it's going to be live online. You can find it brodyradio.com where you can continue the conversation on demand as well. If you are watching this on Facebook, then like, follow. If you're watching it on YouTube, then subscribe. If you like the content, this is the kind of stuff and I know I started out like a little nervous because I was like, third time's a charm. You screw up so many times and you're like, this has got to work eventually, right? So we're going to do it again next Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we're going to be talking to Roxanne, who's also from the Raleigh-Durham Triangle area. And she has jump-started her life, kind of restarted her life in the Caribbean, the island of St. John. And I want to say she's like somewhere in her 30s. And how many times, I've heard my girlfriend Tara say, we need to move to the Caribbean. We just need to move to the islands. That's where we need to live life. I think we're just watching too much reality TV, to be completely honest. But that's going to be next Wednesday. I can't wait to hear her story. And you can watch today's show on demand. Again, be part of the conversation. And remember, get connected, stay inspired, and be happy. Thank you for watching. Dogs! Where are the dogs? The dogs are here.